So a question from my friend Tom Spiro. What kind of response have you gotten from your stories in the United States and China? Has there been a response? Can you sense the response to what you've done?
I think in US, we got pretty good response, I would say, got cited a bunch. And
You should enter the OPC awards contest, so of course.
yeah, we'll do. Yeah, and also I think in China, usually when we publish something like that, this happened the same. We got like I think, I remember this thing is actually anecdote. I think it's hours after we published the first piece. I think one of the state media, I forgot which one, just literally posted something on Twitter, literally just a rundown like of the how scary US surveillance is. We don't know if it's directly in response to her report, but it was like a very interesting timing. Yeah, so
the Chinese propaganda machine put out something about American surveillance, about it, how it really is the true enemy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it's unclear that it's in direct response to our piece, but it's like a few hours after we published that piece. Yeah.
I noticed that there was a spike in Chinese statements, Chinese propaganda about how the Americans are far worse in terms of surveillance and use of technology. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I do think it did. It did do very well, though, and I think we got a lot of response from Chinese. And I think for a lot of people, it did help. Kind of work as a wake-up call. And one of the reasons I think is because the fact that we framed it in the government's own words, that we can sit there and show you, we're not saying this. We have the documents that show you, and it's in the Zhejiang police's own kind of phrasing that they're saying they're setting out to do, collect all this facial data or scan all these irises or get all this DNA. And I think by showing it that way and laying it out in this very matter-of-fact way, you run the risk of losing some people, but at the same time, it doesn't come off sensationalized. And a lot of videos in particular, can do this. They sort of tend to seem sensational about the Chinese surveillance system is something that's it just sounds sensationalized when you talk about it. And so to lay it out in the mundane language of a sort of police bureaucrat in a way, allows people to kind of understand that this is very real. This is not, us just thinking up in a room some kind of crazy, scenario. This is actually what it is. And so I do feel that I feel like we did get a very strong response from China, and it's done very well in Chinese, in part because of that, I think. I will say on the downside, one of my friends who's on the U.S. contractor side said that these types of stories are great for them because every time they do it, Washington will give them more money too. So there's another side to this where you can't control how your reporting is used, but there's definitely a way in which this seeing what China is doing inspires other countries, and that includes the United States, to try to do even more and get more data and do more things and sort of keep up with the Joneses, so to speak.
Maybe the Iranians and the Russians and others are learning from this. So I hope not too much.
And they are. I mean, we've reported on this, and they absolutely are, and they're all sort of swapping notes on a lot of these things.
The authoritarian states are learning from each other.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So here's an interesting question from Jan Alexander. How extensive is Chinese surveillance of Chinese citizens living overseas and of non-Chinese in China and abroad? So in other words, these tools that they've developed, to what extent are they being used internationally?
I think you mean specific, like, one thing that we've noticed is like online surveillance and tracking is something they're doing on Chinese living overseas, and especially having social media activities on platforms like Twitter and, Facebook, things like that. And, when they see, so when you post something that is critical of the Chinese authorities, they are like, we have reported stories that they are able to pinpoint the ID the person behind accounts and actually go find the person's family inside China. So that's like
they can do that. They can monitor international activity outside of China and connect them to family in China.
Yeah, they're doing that. Yeah, they are. we know
of
for a
course,
fact they're monitoring.
WeChat would allow that right there. I mean, WeChat is a major surveillance tool, but
But it's
okay.
not only WeChat. So like, yes, everything happened on WeChat. I can see like, and we are more like what's more alarming is that they are monitoring things like platforms like Twitter and Facebook. The sites are blocked in China that are used by people outside of China. They're still watching things like that. We are. It's unclear how many of the access do they have to like things like backdoor access, like what they can have with Chinese tech companies, but they are watching things that are posted on these platforms. And if they find something they don't like, they have the technology and manpower to ID the person behind the accounts and harass them or their families.
What
so
happens
Muyi
in
and
this- Go ahead, Paul.
Muyi and I reported on this last year pretty extensively. I think what's interesting is people think because they're on an international platform, they're sort of completely apart from Chinese surveillance. But Chinese surveillance, on a manpower level, extends has actually paid especially a lot of focus on Twitter in particular. And if you register for Twitter with a Chinese phone number, it becomes very easy for them to figure out who you are. There's some of the open source intelligence software that might be used for reporting. Chinese police have used to track people overseas. So it wouldn't just be a phone number used; it'd be what your screen name is, what kind of information you post, and whether they can find matches to that within China, and then pinpoint who you are. And one of the there's evidence. We have a video provided by one source where the police call her up with her father in the police station saying, you need to delete this Twitter account that makes fun of Xi Jinping. Otherwise, there's going to be, consequences. And then they put her father on the line and he says, you should delete this. Why? What's going on? And so the level of attention to this stuff very much extends beyond China's borders. And with technology, it's easy, if you have basically an intelligence agency level of snooping going on, even, foreign platforms that you don't have any real sort of backdoor access to, you can still figure a lot out on. And, one thing that was interesting that was raised this year is that, the advertising, you get more data when you do advertising. And so there's been ways that the Chinese police can sort of register as an advertiser on Twitter, and with that get, say, I want this kind of phone number, and then it'll give you access to accounts and you say, oh, okay, well, this is probably the account we were looking for. And so there's just a lot of different ways to do this. And it's kind of remarkable, but they've had several waves of tens of thousands of people whose Twitter accounts have been targeted and have been identified, either within China or outside of China, and then approached.
Wow. Question from Tokyo, my friend Toshio Aratake. Do all these surveillance techniques and others that you must need a highly efficient computer and communications operating systems? What kind of operating system is China using, and how fast is their telecommunication capabilities? I guess they're using 5G.
In part of the country. I mean, it's mixed. There's still a lot of, there's still a lot of 4G and 3G depending on where you are in the country. In particular, the cameras, there's a lot of data being sent back from the cameras themselves, and there are special police networks that these things operate on to send the data as well. So it sort of can be separate from the actual, the telecom network that a normal person would use as well. There's an entire, they basically built all that kind of stuff out. Operating system wise, a lot of this stuff runs on like antiquated Windows, a lot of these things, like it's very, very local China government, oftentimes they haven't updated Windows in years and they're still using that. There is an effort to get off of a Western operating system, but there aren't a lot of good alternatives. So oftentimes, it runs very much like computer systems at a local government almost anywhere in the world. There's not anything particularly different about it.
Yeah. Also, this kind of technology adoption is varies at different places in China. There are like places like major cities or places that they think have higher security risk. They would adopt probably like higher level of technology, and in some places it might be very old school and not as capable. Like we can judge that even from like the proportion of facial recognition cameras that are installed in China. It's not every camera in China is a facial recognition camera. Like the proportion of that is different in different cities.